Hey there, welcome back to the channel. I recently shared a behind the scenes video on a tin type wet plate shoot that we had with model Nicola down at the Tin Type Man studio. So Scott did a wonderful job of capturing Nicola in some steampunk. So we all came down and took over Scott's studio for the day. So go check out the behind the scenes. What I'm going to show you in today's video is I also took some photos of Nicola just with my Sony A7R V. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to recreate some of the images or close to it that Scott took with either the tin or the glass wet plate that he did. And I wanted to show you how I could digitally recreate that look. Now, I've been using digital wet plate for years, and quite frankly, now that I've actually seen proper wet plate up close and being able to study it, I think I had it quite wrong. So what I'm going to do is we're going to go into Lightroom and then into Photoshop, and then I'm going to show you how I can recreate these wet plate looks using Nik Collection. So we've got silver effects and we've also got analog effects. So let's jump in and have a look. So that's one of the photos that I took of Nicola, and this is the finished result, and I'll show you how I created that. And this is an actual wet plate or photo of a wet plate, and I will share with you some of the actual proper scanned images, not just a photo of a photo. So this was another one that I took. So this is the image that I started with, and this is the finished wet plate version that I did. So I've got a few different images to play with. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take an image. I'm going to do this one and I'm going to open it up into Photoshop. Okay, using my healing tool, and I've lost all my tools down the side again. I keep having this happen in Photoshop. I don't know what it is. So I'm just going to go through and just remove some of the freckles. I won't do this that often, but I just wanted a fairly clean look going into this. Remove any flyaway hairs. Now, of course, you can't edit them out in the actual wet plate, but I'm just going to be a little bit fussy. Okay, so what I'm going to do from here is I'm going to open this into Silver Efex. So I'm going to go to Nik Collection 8 and I'm going to go into Silver Efex. I actually went through and spent quite a few hours working out which was the best setup for this, and I'm not going to go through the whole process, but I did make presets for both of these. So I've just called it vintage tin type. So this is in Silver Efex, and I'm just going to go through and I'm going to show you basically the changes that I made in here. So I haven't played with the film type. I've just kept it neutral. I haven't played with the colours, the curves. There is quite a bit of grain, although it is on the softer side. I did boost the brightness a little bit. I boosted the contrast quite a bit, and I dropped the soft contrast a little bit as well. I then went into toning, and I have got an Ambro type 22. And I played with the strength. I also played with the silver hue, the silver toning, the balance, the paper hue, the paper toning. So I played with all of those. I also played with burnt edges. I did an image border, which was number 4, and then I also played with the size and the spread of that. And then I saved that as a preset. So this was my starting point. So this was before and this is afterwards. Now I'm not finished. What I'm going to do from here is I'm going to go into Nik Analog Effects. So I can do that straight from Nik Collection. I can jump from one to another. So it's going to save that and it's going to drop it into Photoshop for me. So I'm going to have that as a starting point. And now it has taken me into Analog Effects. So I also saved a couple of different ones. So a lot of the time, people who are doing wet plate will generally come into photo plates and we'll start having a look at some of the different effects that you can have, and there's a lot. So you've got streaked, corroded concrete. These are all quite strong. They will also play with light leaks. They will also play with dust and things like that. And I think a lot of the time we've just had them too strong because they've been very, very damaged. We wanted to have a look at playing with it that way. But when you actually have a look at a proper wet plate, there is very little damage in that at all. There's a little bit of yellowing, but not too much. So we could go with either the wet plate, which is more like the glass one, and this particular image we did take on glass, so I'm going to use that. And what I have to do now is I'm going to go through and just run you through what I did that was different. So I took the brightness down a little bit. When it came to bokeh, I dropped the strength on that a little bit and moved it so that it was sort of on her face. So there's a little bit of fall off down the bottom where it's quite soft. With the dust and fluff, yes, I have gone for dust and fluff 1, but instead of going at 100%, I kept it at 6%. So it's very, very, very soft. I have grain in the image, but not a lot. When it comes to the photo plate, again, I could have gone, I went for one of the corroded ones. I could have gone at 100%, which is quite corroded. But what I did was I went for 52 or 53%. Vignette, I have taken it to the left and I have shaped it and done the size. I have put a warm Bolton 1 filter on it, but I have dropped the fade and the strength to 50%. So this is where we were from Silver Efex, which is a little on the yellow side, but that's okay. And this is where we are once we have done the wet plate. So now I'm going to hit apply. And it has taken me back into Photoshop. So I'm not quite finished yet. So I have got, so that's my Analog Effects. And that is my Silver Efex. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go back to one of the previous images that I did. And I have put a little bit of damage and some frames on the edge of the image, as well as a photo filter. So this is just some damage that I have got. So I've put that over the top, so it's just some damaged film. Got that at 50% and I have set, so I just had that set to soft light at 54%. So there's just a touch of damage that you can see there. Next, I had this old frame that I put in, and just to make it so on the edge, and I'll show you an image in a tick, on the edge of the wet plate where the collodion sort of catches, where it goes into the dark holder, you get sort of this damage and sort of mess on the edge of the tin plate. So I wanted to recreate that. So I had this grungy old frame that I've put in, and that was just set to multiply just at 100%. So that's without it. So there was a frame put on in Nik, and then I added to that just for that damage. I then went in and I put in a sort of I just went it for the tone of the image, sort of this browny sepia colour, which is on 59%, just to give it that toning. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab these three and I'm going to come over to this image here, and I'm just going to hit shift so that they sit into the middle. So I've got that damage there, that frame, and then I have my photo filter over the top. So I've got that damage just on the edge. Now there's just a bit that's missing, so I'm just going to come in with my brush. Just going to sample that colour. And there you have it. So that's the image that I have done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put up my images and the original wet plate images side by side so you can see what they look like and the differences. So my poses might be slightly different to the ones that Scott took, but overall the images are going to be fairly similar. So I have used ambient light, whereas Scott's using like 5,000 watt flash, but I'm also using a much more modern camera. So let's go take a look at those. So as I said, some of them are slightly different poses, but the ones on the left are Scott's original tin plate images, which have been scanned in and digitally reproduced. The ones on the right are the ones that I took into Silver Efex and Analog Efex. Some of them seem to have a little more yellow in them. Some of them are a little more sort of softly toned. So there are some differences between the different wet plates, but I've tried to keep them fairly close. So what do you think? I think they're closer to the actual wet plate than what I have previously used on digitized images. So there was nowhere near as much damage. Maybe if I had some really old wet plate images that have been around for, you know, a couple of 100 years, and maybe they've got some damage, and I guess that's where those wet plate effects come in sort of Nik Collection or other programs as well. But the toning and the lack of damage in new wet plate photos is quite evident when you have a look at Scott's images as opposed to my images. So that's it for today. I hope this is something that you found really interesting. My little journey into learning all about wet plate has been very interesting, and I really do need to reach out and say thank you to Scott for taking me into his studio, showing me around, showing me how everything works, and then coming back again with Nicola, and this is where we recorded the behind the scenes, so don't forget to go and check that out. And we had her in several different outfits, and we're capturing some fabulous wet plate. So that's it. Thanks for watching. I hope to see you next time on YouTube. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up, maybe subscribe, and I'll see you later. Bye.